Hello and welcome to the Don't Shop on Tuesday Zoom chat. We're your hosts, Jacob and Barrie, and today we are joined by Delegate Sheila Ruth, a good friend of ours who we know from back in the trenches, back from the Bernie Sanders and Our Revolution days, and now she serves faithfully and progressively still in District 44 as a Maryland delegate. So thank you so much for joining us, Sheila. I know that you were just out at early voting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and excuse the t-shirt campaign attire. I was just out, like you said, at the polls for early voting.
Yeah. So yeah. Like I was saying before, like we've known each other for a while. So can we go just through a little bit of like how you got to be the delegate from 44B here from from an activist and or concerned citizen to activist to to representative, really a model sort of, and then a sort of dream projector trajectory. I think that we hope for a lot of citizens that care.
Yeah, thank you so much. And as you said, I was involved in the Bernie Sanders campaign 2016 and 2020. And I was a volunteer canvassing and phone banking on that campaign. I was really inspired by Bernie and the things that he talked about, the things that real people care about. And so I worked on that campaign, and then I was actually in Philadelphia at the convention, not as a delegate, but as a volunteer for the campaign. And so we, I ended up in canvassing the protest camps to sign people up for the live stream that would eventually become Our Revolution. So I always say I was a member of Our Revolution before there was an Our Revolution.
Mhm.
So after that presidential campaign ended, I continued to be involved, worked with the two of you to help found Our Revolution Baltimore. We did a lot of working on the progressive movement. And I also, in addition to that, founded the Baltimore County Progressive Democrats Club as well. And so did a lot of activism, worked on the Fight for 15, campaign finance reform with Get Money Out Maryland. And I know you've interviewed Charlie Cooper. I
Charlie
worked
Cooper,
very
yeah.
closely on campaign finance reform with Charlie Cooper, and others in Get Money Out Maryland. You, uh, Medicare for all, single payer universal health care. And in 2018, I was inspired to run for office, and I ran against a incumbent Democratic councilman who was a moderate Democrat, somebody that I disagreed with on a lot of issues. And so I ran against him. I had no campaign experience. I did take some short campaign training classes, and basically just knocked a lot of doors. And I did not win, but I did get 43% of the vote, which running against a well-funded incumbent was I thought was pretty good. But I also
Better than Bernie did his first time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Um,
knocked on doors for you.
yeah,
Yeah, full disclosure to everyone, yes, we did.
yes, thank you. I really appreciated that. Um, and I really couldn't have done it without you and without Our Revolution, Baltimore. I was you know, that was your support was great. Um, so I also, at the same time I ran for county council, I ran for Democratic Central Committee because in Maryland you can run for both. They're both on the ballot. You can run for both. And so I didn't win for county council, but I won for Democratic Central Committee. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I worked on for several years is um, uh, electing Democratic candidates, but also really trying to move the Democratic Party in a more progressive direction. I feel like we had some successes and really did some good things. And then when the delegate seat opened up, I applied for it. We don't have special elections in Maryland, which is a problem that really needs to be fixed. When there when there is a vacancy in the legislature, the vacancy is filled by a small handful of insiders on the Democratic Central Committee, and so I was selected for the delegate seat, and I was sworn in January 2020, 6 weeks before we adjourned early for COVID.
Sheila, can I just go back in time just for a moment? While you were on the Democratic Central Committee, there was Project Cuckoo.
Project Cuckoo, yes. Yeah, I called it that because the cuckoo lays its eggs in other birds' nests, and so it was just a sort of a funny, that the progressives are laying their eggs in the Democratic nest. And so beyond running for Central Committee myself and then being on Central Committee, I worked with people around the state to try to get progressives to run for Central Committee and help them understand how to get elected. And so we did have some progressives elected around the state. That I'm no longer working on that, but there are others who are still continuing to try to build progressive power within the Democratic Party in Maryland as well.
It is really important because as we were talking before, Barry and I were talking about before you actually came on, and as we've discussed so many times, while Maryland is blue, it's so blue that it's basically a purple. It's not real, and oftentimes people the Democratic Party spans such a wide range
It does.
of political viewpoints that that people who would normally be Republicans in other environments run and caucus with the Democrats because it's the only one of the only games in town
Yeah,
if you want to compete. And so it is very important to really, stake out and continue to advocate and to push the Democratic Party within Maryland and within any state, towards a more progressive direction, because there's definitely forces that are pulling it opposite. And you've found that a lot
absolutely.
in the delegate seat.
Absolutely. And if I could get up on my soapbox for a minute, I want to talk a minute about unaffiliated voters. And unfortunately, I'm a little too late because we're past the deadline on that. But if you are unaffiliated, and I understand why many people are unaffiliated voters because they don't really feel like the parties are speaking to them. But if you are unaffiliated, you are losing your vote. You're disenfranchising yourself because in most elections in Maryland, the election is decided in the primary. And even if it's not, you get to the general election and you go, who are these people running? I don't really like either of them. Well, if you didn't vote in the primary to help choose the nominee, then you don't have any say in who those are. And if you're unaffiliated in Maryland, because we have closed primaries, you cannot vote for who the Democratic or who the Republican nominee would be. So, while it's too late for this election, in elections going forward, I really hope people who want to see more progressives, say in the legislature, would consider registering with the Democratic Party, in order to be able to vote in the primary and help choose progressive nominees who would then go up against the Republicans in the general election. We Unfortunately, currently, if you're not registered to vote, you can register at the polls. But if you're registered and unaffiliated, you cannot affiliate with a party. And so you basically cannot vote in the primary.
That's what I was just about to ask and looking up because I was like, I'm pretty sure we have same that there is same day
There
registration, voter
is.
registration in Maryland, but you can't do changing of a party affiliation same day.
Correct. That's correct. And the deadline is, I believe, 3 weeks before the election. So June 2nd was the deadline to affiliate with a party. Now, there's a bill in Annapolis that would allow people to go to the polls because it's not fair. You can register if you're not registered, but you can't affiliate if you're registered and unaffiliated. So this bill would allow people to go to the polls and say, I want to be a Democrat or I want to be a Republican if they're unaffiliated, and then affiliate that same day and get the party ballot that same day and vote it. That bill, I believe, passed the House but died in the Senate. It's been around for a number of years, but this year I think it passed the House.
What is the main, in general, what is the sort of main opposition to bills like this?
So I think there's concern that in this case, I think there's concern that people will try to manipulate the system, where you register for a party to choose the least viable candidate, where say the Democratic Party or the Republican Party will try to get a bunch of people registered for the
Hmm.
opposite party to choose the least viable candidate to make that candidate lose. I don't think that's a very realistic concern. I just don't see
Right.
that happening. But that is what some people are concerned about. And and I think there are some people who say, well, the party should be the ones picking their nominee, and they don't really want unaffiliated voters coming in and helping to pick the nominee. Um, and I
Just
always tell people that if you, um, going back to affiliating, if you affiliate with a party in order to vote the party ballot, you can always change back to unaffiliated after the primary.
But Sheila, just like voter fraud, which is so minute,
Yeah,
just organizing something like finding the weakest link in the party just is overwhelming and
yeah,
just almost impossible to do.
right, right.
Also, how do you know if we could always tell who was going to be the strongest or the weak? I mean, that's why
Right.
you have elections, right?
Yeah.
If I just it doesn't seem, yeah.
No, absolutely.
The cynic in me here definitely feels like this is people who are concerned that more people voting is going to lead to them actually not being able to maintain power. And
No,
those sorts of people I'm always very skeptical of.
no, that's true. And too often there's this narrative that the most viable candidate is the moderate centrist, who's gonna put out consultant speak. And I don't believe that's true. But as you say, that's what primaries are for. Primaries are to find out what people want in their nominee, and then that nominee goes up against the other nominee. And so we should always have competitive primaries.
It said that Hillary Clinton wanted to run against Donald Trump in 2016. They perceived him as the weakest, and you know how that worked out.
Right,
And
right.
Maryland's a funny place. It has two, isn't it 2-1 Democratic registration, and we elected a Republican governor. Not me.
Yeah,
Republican governor was elected twice for 8 years, and he might have been elected again if he didn't have constitutional constraints. So I always say there was a meme on the internet a while back. It was a dress, and you couldn't tell if it was white or it was blue. That's Maryland.
right.
It's blue.
I remember that.
And we are so light blue, it could be white. And so tell us, we have a seasoned, intelligent, articulate, hardworking progressive. What's it like getting jammed up in the legislative machinery?
Um, it's hard. It's really hard. And you know, I have actually passed not a lot of bills, and that tends to be because I try to do big things. And by the time you get a bill passed, it's often so watered down by all the compromises that have to be made that it doesn't do as much as, you had hoped it would do. And so it is. It's very difficult. There's sort of this as you said, the Democratic Party is we say a big tent party, and so you you know have to make sure that everybody is on board. And for everybody to be on board, I mean, there are a few Democrats that will often vote otherwise, against the bills, but they generally try to make sure everybody's on board. And that makes it hard because we are a big tent party and don't always agree on things. And beyond the party issues, um, the the corporate lobbyist influence is, it's huge, and it's really hard when you're expected to compromise with everybody who comes in with their own special interest.
to that, to that point, I guess what I wanted to ask was around, is there a sense in the legislature, despite the fact, that a lot of people, I guess, in the, sort of in the corporate elite are doing quite well. So perhaps their perception is their things are going fine. It's working very well. Um, is there a general at all sense of urgency around that as these, that governments are failing to meet the moment, and that there's some sort of, whether it's lack of boldness of vision or some level of process and sort of like systems reform that's needed? Is there any discussion within there around sort of like the big picture, around not just like individual bills and getting those passed within the legislature, but like on the year to year, like is the Maryland legislature, let alone the federal government, sort of meeting, and is it going to get worse or better in terms of how it's meeting sort of the challenges that lie ahead?
Yeah, no, we mean, in spite of my frustration, we actually do some good things. I mean, we were the first state this year to pass a ban on surveillance pricing in grocery stores and food delivery services. And surveillance pricing is where, you probably know, but it's where they charge you one price and me a different price based on the data that they have. And some stores have
Hmm.
like electronic shelf labels, and if it's food delivery services, you're ordering on an app. And you don't think about the fact that that app could be, I mean, like, you go into McDonald's and you use the McDonald's app, and they may show you one price and me another price, and even if they're giving you a coupon on the app, that may be a coupon off of a price that's higher than what they're charging me, because it's all electronic and they have your data and they know, oh, well, this person gets the same thing all the time, or this person, is, whatever the data they have, they can charge more. So we did pass a bill that bans that in Maryland. We were the first state to do that. Now, it only does it, I believe, for grocery stores and food delivery services. So it's a great first step, but we need to go further. And so I just think that's an example of where we actually do
Hmm.
big things, but it just doesn't. It's a good start. It's a good start, but
Hmm.
we need to do more.
That
Um,
Now I know why so many places want me on the app.
That's yes,
I
that's
mean,
absolutely right. That's why they want you on the app.
that was very enlightening. Thank you.
Sure,
But
sure.
I
Like,
know, and we want to talk about and I think you're absolutely right. You have big ideas. But I truly believe that if we take labels off, like it's not like progressive or this or that, do you want health care? Do you want your children's school to be funded? Do you want,
right.
if we take away the labels and we take away the false narratives, do you want schools, and I know this is one of your issues, to be, elevator or escalator to prisons? I'm not using the right term, but
School to prison pipeline.
thank you. You've had such, so we decode it and just put it in terms of, if you're sick, how would you like to go to the hospital? Or, if you're so I want to hear, I know a lot of them, I want to hear about your passions and what you're fighting for. And I mean, you recognize reality, but you still have these big goals, together with bills like the surveillance app. Now that I know I'm not going on any more apps.
Yeah, thank you. And I think one of my biggest passions that I'm fighting for is healthcare, specifically single payer universal healthcare. You know, we we're trying to fight the cuts to healthcare that the Trump administration is making, and we absolutely have to do that. We have to protect people's healthcare. But the reality is, long before Trump, our healthcare system was failing too many people. There are too many people, even who have insurance, who can't get the healthcare they need because of all the barriers, whether it be out-of-pocket expenses, deductibles. Now we have insurance company denials, and there are pharmacy benefit managers, which are not a benefit at all, as far as I can tell. They're just an extra middleman that gets us extra profit from your prescriptions. And so all of those things are barriers to people getting health care. And it's not only hurting patients, it's hurting doctors, because doctors now have to have a whole staff just to deal with the insurance billing, to deal with appeals when the insurance company denies something. And so we need a better healthcare system, and the insurance model is not it. Because the insurance model, first of all, is incredibly inefficient, where you have different insurance companies and complicated billing processes for different insurance companies. Even in Maryland, where we have taken some good steps, it's still it's not the best model. I mean, insurance was supposed to be for catastrophic failure. You pay into it, and then if you have a massive car accident or something, it covers catastrophic failure, and you hope you never need it, but you pay into it if you need it. It's not meant for everyday health care. A single payer system would be essentially a government being the insurer for everybody. And it just makes so much sense because it reduces those administrative costs. It gets rid of the insurance company profit layer. It allows the government to negotiate and to have some control over pricing. And at the same time, to make sure providers are fairly compensated, because we have a provider shortage as well. So it allows the government to do all that. And there are plenty of studies that show it would provide better care for less cost than what we're paying now per capita. So you hear all these scare tactics about it's going to cost so much more. It's going to cost trillions of dollars. But what you have to keep in mind is that cost replaces all the other healthcare costs. And so in the long run, it would be cheaper. You might have to pay a payroll tax, but you don't pay uh, deductibles, you don't pay premiums, you don't pay out-of-pocket costs, or very minimal ones. So it's difficult to get that started because of all the fears. So one of the things that I have been working for is trying to get a study to show what the actual costs and benefits, a cost benefit analysis essentially of single payer healthcare in Maryland.
We've been is the disagreement and the fears, is that still happening within the Democratic Party at this point? Um,
Yes.
what yeah, are they saying that they would be? Is this an honest disagreement? Are they saying that they would be convinced by this study? Because sometimes I feel like it must be, especially for people this involved, it must be willful ignorance if it truly is ignorance that they don't want to know because because the people who are supporting them don't want it, and so they need to remain ignorant so that they can maintain a fig leaf, because there's just so much data, and we've been having this debate for decades now.
We have.
um,
Yep.
and the only real reason that fundamentally it seems to come back to is that there's just entrenched moneyed interests that make it too hard to gain the political will. But I just, yeah, like, what do you see any path, sort of, or any track around reaching agreement, or ways that we can at least make stepwise progress, or do that, like, what, or does that let out steam, and so it's better to just go for the whole thing? How can we, because it just dies every year, and it's infuriating. While we had a pandemic where 1 million people died, and we didn't fix our healthcare system failed in front of us, and we didn't fix it. And so what does it take? What is it? What does it take to make change up in these halls of power?
No, absolutely. And it's both. It really is both. There are people in the General Assembly who genuinely believe that single payer healthcare is something that we have to do, but don't believe that we can get there. there are also people who are entrenched in the system, and I mean, look, the insurance company lobbyists are down there every day. They stay in Annapolis. They're there, and so, um, you know, that they're just it's difficult to get past that, but it's not all that. There are some people who I had somebody tell me that and I had somebody tell me that they believe not only that we can't get there, but that if we try, it's going to scare people away from voting for Democrats, which I think is just completely wrong. They think that there are too many people who oppose a single payer healthcare system, and that they will lose people if we do that. I think that's wrong. I think people want healthcare. And people just want to be able to get the care they need when they need it, where they need it. So, I think the study is an important step. I think that we can get there. If you look at Colorado, last year in 2025, Colorado passed a bill that is an analysis. It's a payment system analysis of single payer healthcare. They passed the bill to do this analysis. The bill said that the study would only be done if there was enough private funding. So it doesn't even require any state funding. It says it'll only be done if they raise enough private funding. Their goal was $750,000. They passed the bill. They raised $750,000, and they are now doing this analysis. And so my latest version of the bill was based on this bill in Colorado, and they did it, and I think that we can do it too.
This may not be a straight analogy, but I was one of my relatives who lives in New York City came to visit before the election for mayor. She just didn't believe what Zoran Mondami was saying could happen. I mean, she said, "Oh, it sounds nice," and he's proving it every day that
Right.
and it can. And I just think that we've been beaten down and lied to, and there's false narratives, and that big money comes in. Until Reagan, insurance companies were nonprofits. So now you have these massive profit centers that you have to dislodge. But I really, it goes back to how could this be? Even though Canada has it and England has it and
Right.
Asian countries have it. Um,
Right.
one of my neighbors is from Peru. Peru has it. I mean, that I just think that people just don't. They stop believing. They stop believing
Right.
in that the 330 million of us deserve all these good things. So I mean that sounds very promising, and
It, it's a tough time. I mean, it's a tough time right now because, you can understand why people get down a little bit on believing,
Absolutely.
on believing for big things, especially in the current moment. I want to ask you because you mentioned first when you first got appointed, and then you were reelected in 2022. But when you first you ran, but when you first got appointed, you then had to go through COVID, and then then you had 2 years of, I suppose, sort of semi-normalcy, and then you've now had a year and a half under a Trump 2.0 administration. And yeah, thoughts around just sort of those experiences and how, sort of how the role and how the thought process has changed around what it means to like what the role of government is in there at the state level and your role as a delegate and yeah, how the environment sort of changes that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe because much of my time in the legislature has been dealing with these crises, but I feel like it's our job is to protect Marylanders from everything that comes down the pike, whether it be, COVID or the Trump tariffs or, ICE. Um, you know, it's our job to do the best we can, and there's only so much we can do about some of these things, but it's our job to do the best we can to protect Marylanders. And you talk about the role of government. That is the role of government. The role of government is to support people, to help people, and to, protect people and to make sure that people have a good quality of life. And I think sometimes government gets a bad reputation, but that's what we're here for.
We don't shop on Tuesday. We have a mailing list that goes all over the country, goes abroad. So what I say to people when we go micro, when we go local, we say, look for your Sheila. I mean, in your town or wherever, find the legislator, find your Sheila who's working for the people. And we are recording this right now during early voting in Maryland. Maryland has early voting for a week and then it's paused. So election day will be June 23rd, the primary. So we're going to get this out before. If you live in 44B, please vote for Sheila. If you live anywhere nearby, come and knock on doors or work the polling. We're usually not this partisan. She's an old friend of ours. She was one of the first people we talked Don't Jump on Tuesday with, and and we're still here and growing. So we, don't feel, oh, Maryland is so lucky. They have all these progressive or, they're doing this. There are people in your area making a difference. And, so if you have to look outside of your locale to people making changes, do that too.
And I'd
Absolutely.
say, Sheila shows as well that if you are somebody who gets inspired by seeing the work of people like Sheila Orsa or, a higher profile, sort of more national figure, if you like she and like we did, become inspired through those, initial, sort of actions and seeing other politicians who are inspiring. And then, follow on her journey of, if you don't see the Sheila in your district, you should feel empowered to become her, because Sheila, you are extraordinary. But I think that you also agree that the everyday citizens that care are definitely also extraordinary and can step up and rise to, and that
Absolutely.
we need more of them to do that.
Absolutely. I'm somebody who would never have thought of running for office for most of my life. And if I can do it, anybody else can do it.
Wow, you're doing it fantastically, and we so appreciate both the continuous progressive representation that you give to the district and to your friendship. And so, we want to thank you so much for coming on today, and we want to thank everyone for joining in. And until next time, don't shop on Tuesday.